This is Still Enrolled.
And welcome on into the latest edition of Still Enrolled, a Big Ten football podcast. As always, national talk show host Ryan Hickey, joined alongside Penn State sideline reporter Brian Tripp. Tripp, it's funny, we joked last podcast that while week 7 was the one we anticipated the most, right? We were looking forward to it for a while. But coming off of week 6, with all the chaos, all the upsets, all the craziness that, look, week 7 will be great, but in terms of the chaos and just great endings, great games, maybe we won't get a repeat of week number 6. Safe to say, after some big games in the Big Ten that went right down to the wire, some insane finishes, yeah, I think we may be wrong about that prediction.
Well, the Big Ten injects all this life with these blue blood programs from the West Coast in Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA. And this really, like, I know you had the Michigan USC game a couple of weeks ago, and it was a thriller that came down to the wire. But to have Ohio State at Oregon in Autzen in front of a record crowd, and to have Penn State at USC, 3:30 primetime window on CBS, Ohio State at Oregon, the primetime window on NBC. And for both games to deliver game of the year type performances, this is exactly what the Big Ten was hoping for when you had this injection of teams into the conference. So I think, we'll obviously dive into the games, but what this means big picture for the conference moving forward, I think this is exactly what all of the university presidents, what the network executives, what they were hoping for when you were adding these programs, these premier programs to the Big Ten.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had 2 games go literally down to the wire here in the conference. 4 to the 7 Big Ten games decided either in the final minute or in overtime. And like you said, the 2 marquee matchups here, Penn State, USC, Oregon, Ohio State, do not fail to deliver. That is for sure. What a hell of a game.
You had the last 4 games airing in the Big Ten on Saturday in this order. Penn State, USC, a 3-point margin. Illinois, Purdue, again, one of the last games airing, a 1-point margin. Ohio State, Oregon, one of the last games airing, 32-31, a 1-point margin. So we're at 5 points right there. And then the other one, the Minnesota-UCLA game in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, a 4-point margin. So you had the last 4 games of the day in the Big Ten separated by a total of 9. The games were decided by 9, right? Is my math right? 9 points? 9 points? That's ridiculous.
2 in overtime, 1 on a failed 2-point conversion, another one, touchdown, less than 30 seconds left. It was, like I said, the chaos. Not only did the games deliver, but the overall just viewing experience in the Big Ten was unbelievable. We'll get into all of them here. Let's start with the big one that we hyped up for a while. They're looking forward to. Oregon, Ohio State. The game delivered, and how about the Ducks coming through here with a 32-31 victory trip over Ohio State? They moved now to number 2 in the AP poll. Why they're not number 1 is beyond me. But anyway, that's, I guess, a different discussion for a different pod. But your biggest takeaway from this game trip could be positive from Oregon, negative from Ohio State. What was your biggest takeaway from watching these 2 epic teams clash against each other?
I think going in, how much we all had the idea of Ohio State as this perfect team, right? They have everything that you need at the skill positions on offense. Will Howard's played well. Maybe they haven't been challenged a ton yet this season, but a dominant defense. But Oregon, to beat Ohio State in some of the areas that they did, right? If you play this again at a neutral site or Ohio State's the home team, I still think Ohio State's the favorite going into the game. But Oregon's overall team speed and how they went about getting the victory, nullifying Ohio State's running game, a running game that was held to a season low 141 yards. Ohio State just 4.3 yards per carry in the game. And for Oregon to win it without their best defensive player, Jordan Birch, I think the way that they won is most impressive, not just getting the victory, but how they did it and nullifying what I thought might be Ohio State's advantage in their running game against Oregon's defense, the way that Ashton Genty did earlier this year against the Ducks. That to me is the most impressive in how they won. And then the buzz coming out of it about Autzen and the noise. And certainly it seemed like the noise impacted Ohio State. And I know they had guys rotating in and out on the offensive line and maybe a serious injury to Josh Simmons, who's probably done for the rest of the year at left tackle for what's already a weak offensive line. I think how they won. And then, this is the first time this Big Ten where we hear so much about the Big House and Ohio State and Happy Valley in a whiteout and Iowa. The first time to get to experience 61,000 in Autzen, which is 40,000 less than you're getting in many of those venues I just talked about. But the impact that Autzen had on the game, those are the things that stand out to me for Oregon.
What stood out to me is concern from Ohio State's perspective. We talked about this on Thursday's pod going back, right? Where it's like,
that's not fair to me. Like, you just had the number 3 team in the country defeat the number 2 team, this perfect Ohio State team, right? Very few flaws, very few weaknesses. You had, I don't think your biggest takeaway can be, I'm concerned about Ohio State. That's not fair to Oregon when they had Dylan Gabriel outplay Will Howard. And both played well, but Gabriel, the running game for Oregon, what they have at the wide receiver position, the team speed, Stewart, Johnson, Ferguson, what their defense did to nullify Ohio State's running game. That's not fair to say, I'm concerned about Ohio State. For someone who talks about all the time not basing his power rankings off of preseason prognostication, that's not fair to the Ducks. The Ducks were the better team, and the better team won the game. You can't tell me it's about concern with Ohio State after the game. You got to tell me why Oregon won. That they won because of their team speed and what they did, their quarterback play, the outstanding play at wide receiver, and their defense. Even though they allowed 31 points, their defense rising to the occasion, creating big plays, creating turnovers in the game. Even on special teams, the line drive kick that goes off the Ohio State player 5 yards past the line. Oregon won because they were the better team. And you cannot come out of it saying my biggest takeaway is concern about Ohio State. That's not fair to Oregon. That's not fair.
This is not what did we talk about on Thursday? That Ohio State had more pressure in this game because the talking point coming out of it would be if they lost, there is pressure on them. And if Oregon played well, it's like this is someone I picked Oregon to win the national title preseason. So this is not like I didn't believe in the Ducks. I didn't believe in them in this game, but we talked about how I think they could keep on building in the right direction. I just didn't think they were clicking in all cylinders in this specific week to take down Ohio State. But there's no doubt about their elite ability. Like you said, so yes, fine. We'll start with Oregon. Fine. You get your wish. You win trip yet again. They were tremendous. The thing about Oregon that's so impressive is that not only did they play their best game of the season when they needed to the most, they also did it shorthanded. You mentioned before, they played without Jordan Birch, their best defender on defense by far against a high-powered Ohio State offense. And for a large part, look, I know they gave up 31 points, but it didn't feel like his loss was truly magnified the way it should have been. That's a credit to Oregon's defense for guys stepping up and making plays when they had to. Dylan Gabriel was tremendous. He threw some amazing deep balls. That speed was a real problem for Ohio State. You had Johnson and Stewart stepping up with some big time plays. And oh, by the way, not only were they shorthanded defensively, they're shorthanded offensively because Trayshawn Holden, like an idiot, decided to spit on Ohio State defender, get himself tossed in the first half. So now you have a key receiver out, your best defensive player out. By the way, you left 5 points on the board in terms of sloppy field extra point kicking, where 1 extra point is dropped. You try to go for 2, don't get it. You missed a field goal. You had plenty of errors in this game if you're Oregon, and you still found a way to win and beat a really good Ohio State team. The Ducks deserve a ton of credit. And again, I think while I didn't believe in them this week, everything I thought in the preseason that they could be and would be, I think was proven true in this game.
Ohio State, for the last, remember the problem 2 years ago was they allowed too many big plays. Last year didn't allow big plays. Haven't allowed big plays this year. The team speed for Oregon had 6 players with a play of 25 or more yards in this game. 6 different players, whether it was the run game, the pass game, even Gabriel himself with his one run. 6 players with plays of 25 or more yards. Oregon's speed and explosive ability, when you put the playmakers on both sides head to head, they created more big plays. And that was a huge reason why they were successful against Ohio State, and a defense in Ohio State that had not been allowing those big plays. That, again, their speed, and I thought their ability to get to the edge, like even any run, 4 or 5, 6 yards, the receivers to get the yards after catch. You don't see that often against Ohio State. And then to take that and marry it with the physicality that they had at the line of scrimmage, it was impressive. It really was.
It was, and we've talked about Oregon's offensive line now. Again, there's a work in progress, had some injuries, and now you see they're fully healthy, and they by far played their best game. 0 sacks allowed on Dylan Gabriel, only 2 tackles for loss, and they ran the ball for 155 yards, 5 yards a pop against, like you said, what was widely regarded as the best defense coming into this game in college football. And they made them look, honestly, like they were Wisconsin's defense, like just a middling defense. It was Oregon's offense, like you said, it was a perfect combination. I think this is why Dan Lanning is going to have a lot of success at Oregon going forward. He has, in order to win in college football here in 2024 and beyond, you need to have both speed and physicality. It's a tough thing to have both, but you see the elite teams at the top, Georgia, Alabama, a lot of these teams that win national titles here in recent years. Michigan had it, a little more power than speed, but they were overwhelming in power. You need to have a combination of both where you have to be finesse and explosive, but also tough in the trenches. Oregon showed you on Saturday night, without a doubt, now going forward the rest of the season, they have the perfect balance of both that it takes to win a national title.
There's no doubt about that. But you know what? You just said something really interesting there. Dan Lanning had his team perform in a big game. And you want to talk about Ohio State concerns? What is the big storyline? Crazy, right? Coming out of this game again, obviously, game management at the end, the final play call. Will Howard, is that responsibility on him? Or does it fall on Ryan Day and the offense? Ohio State not getting a call. Smith, look, they were in field goal range, and Smith pushed off, and the call goes against Ohio State on that last drive. But here's an Ohio State team on a big stage again. Granted, it's not a stage that will end their season in 2024 because of the expanded playoff. But now the conversation that you wanted to have right off the top of the podcast is concern about the Buckeyes. And one of those big concerns is a Ryan Day team against a top 5 opponent. They're now 1-7 in the regular season under Ryan Day against top 5 teams. It's their 3rd straight loss against a ranked opponent, the most for Ohio State consecutively dating back to 2008, 2009. And it's the first time Ryan Day now has lost a Big Ten game to an opponent outside of Michigan. They still have Penn State, a game at Happy Valley, in Happy Valley to start November on their schedule. Is there real concern? Here's your chance. Is there real concern about Ohio State? And what is the biggest concern? Is it O-line? Is it coaching? Is it quarterback play? Is it the lack of ability to get off the field defensively? Like, okay, thought going in they were impenetrable. They were invincible. This was the Ohio State University football team that is national championship or bust. Well, now they have a blemish. They still can win a national championship, but now they have a blemish. What really is that concern with Ohio State?
I came into this game with 2 concerns, right? Offensive line and quarterback. How is Will Howard going to play in the first big game at Ohio State? And how is that offensive line going to perform in really their first, depending on how you view Iowa, their second true test, but first true test on the road. Yeah. And I come out of this game with 2 concerns still. Offensive line, especially now with the injuries that they suffered and seemingly are coming more banged out and their depth is questionable. But I come away, my biggest concern is their defense. Like, I don't fault really, honestly, Ryan Day for this loss. I think for him, what he has done, at least in my opinion, has delegated the power, right? Him and Chip Kelly are kind of the offensive minds, and he has given Jim Knowles the power here defensively. And all offseason, we heard how Ohio State brought everybody back, and everyone that had a chance to go to the draft came back because they wanted revenge to finish the job. And they bring in Caleb Downs. This was supposed to be the best defense money could buy. This was supposed to be the best defense in the country coming off a year last year in which outside of one game against Michigan, they were by far the best defense in all the country. And you go into this game here and you can't stop anybody. Like Oregon moved the ball no problem. You just mentioned 6 different players with at least one explosive play of 25 or more yards. Oregon ran the ball really well despite inconsistency in the run game so far. The pass game, I mean, Denzel Burke, I think, is still getting blown by from different Oregon receivers in this game. Why they'd made no adjustments and gave him help over the top, I have no idea. But this Ohio State defense that was really supposed to be the calling card, right? That was really supposed to be so good that it was going to make Will Howard's job as easy as possible to not have a lot of pressure on him. They folded, they choked. And I think the same reasons we talked about last year with Ohio State's defense not getting it done in the big spot against Michigan, it reigns true again. They were not physical. They couldn't get a stop. In the fourth quarter, you allowed 10 points to Oregon and could not get them off the field when it mattered most. A lot of the concerns last year, I think, rear their ugly heads again this year. And that defense is overrated. I think at this point with this performance here, when it comes to playing the elite of the elite, you can't trust them right now to get stops and help you win a game at Penn State, but also whoever you play in the playoff. If you play Oregon again in the national in a rematch in the Big Ten title game in the playoff, like this defense against the best teams in the country now is a massive concern.
The biggest thing for a defense is to create game-changing plays. When Ohio State had its best teams, Chase Young or Bosa, whoever, right? The sacks, one-man wrecking crew change a game. What's disappointing about the defense in this game? Didn't create turnovers, didn't create sacks, no game-changing plays. That's where Ohio State's defense, and I still think they have the personnel to do it. I think it's one game. I'm not going to overreact to one game and say, oh my gosh, this isn't a national championship caliber. This is 2 bona fide heavyweights playing in a game that had 7 lead changes. It could have gone either way. Maybe Ohio State gets a call at the end. Maybe they slide down 1 second earlier and they kick the game-winning field goal. You know, they're a missed field goal against Georgia from perhaps winning another national championship. There's so many if, ands, buts. Like, it's a 1-score margin game, but now there's starting to be a consistent trend that they're coming out on the wrong side in these tight margin games. And why? Well, you need your defense. Yeah, they came up with a stop. They held Oregon to a field goal down inside the 5-yard line. That gave them a chance. But you need to create turnovers. You need to create sacks. You need to create negative plays. And the defense wasn't able to do that in this game. All in all, though, like, great game, lives up to the hype. I think it means more, as we said going in, it means more for Oregon to have won the game because it positions them the rest of the way than, like, I'm not panicking if I'm an Ohio State fan. Yeah, they lost. You have reasons to concern and nitpick. But for me, it's more impressive that Oregon won than more concerning that Ohio State lost. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I think if you're Ohio State, what you can feel really good about is Will Howard's performance. Because you mentioned before, their run game was, for the most part, non-existent. Trayvon Henderson had a good game, but only had 10 carries. Quinshon Judkins was a complete non-factor, also had a costly fumble that helped Oregon get back in the game early on. So this was mostly the Will Howard show. His defense was not giving him a lot of help, and the run game was not giving him a lot of help. And he was tremendous. He was outstanding. And again, if Jeremiah Smith doesn't push off, or if the referee swallows the whistle, and we've seen plenty of bad officiating to where it's not exactly out of the realm of possibility here, they win that game. And they win that game in part because Will Howard helped lead them down the field, mostly on carrying them on his right arm. He was outstanding in this game. I thought he made really good decisions, was tremendous with the football. He was great. I think he answered any questions, and I had a lot of questions and doubts about his ability to help elevate this Ohio State offense. That is definitely one area of encouragement if you're Ohio State. Well, going forward now, when you play Penn State, if you make it to the Big Ten title game, whoever you play in the college football playoff, you don't have to worry about Will Howard's ability in a big game to come through. I know the last play did not go great. You can get on him for, being an experienced quarterback, having to know better. And sure, we can break that down for sure. But I think overall, his body work in that hostile environment against a good defense, I think he really kind of silenced any doubters, answered any questions about his ability in this offense to lead them.
Yeah, and like, this is a weekend where we talk about the landscape of college football now, and the whole concern was devaluing the regular season. Stakes are so high because now Ohio State's got some pressure the rest of the year, and that's why stakes were so high down the coast in Los Angeles. Penn State down 20-6 at the half. And second half team, right? When Penn State won the Big Ten, second half team, the adjustments Penn State made to come back and find a way at USC to win 33-30. Yeah, the Nittany Lions, I know you have it for our audience on YouTube. The question, did the Nittany Lions show you something in their comeback victory? That's a resounding yes. In overtime, the way they got it done. And same thing as the Oregon-Ohio State game. You can nitpick flaws. You can look at where, and we'll compare the three teams here in a moment. But Penn State, sure, there's question marks coming out of it, but to find a way to get it done against a USC team a desperate USC team, and probably it got to be the best 3-3 team in the country. I need to see a list of all the three, but on the road, the long trip, coming from behind, putting it on the shoulders of your quarterback. And I'll tell you, to stand on the sideline and see the fire and the determination, and I can't repeat some of the things he was saying as a leader, but right, there was kind of a narrative about Drew Allar out there as a game manager. He's got all this special talent, but he's kind of lackadaisical, ho-hum. He just goes about his business. He wasn't perfect. He threw 3 picks, one of them a Hail Mary. But Drew Allar led the Penn State comeback. Drew Allar put the team on his back on the final drive of regulation to get the game-tying touchdown with 2 incredible fourth down conversions to a receiver, Julian Fleming, who kept dropping the ball earlier in the game, and then to go back to a guy who's had a career that people didn't expect. They thought he's going to go to Ohio State. He's going to be the next big star. Well, now he ends up back home, and he made 2 huge catches for Penn State to win the game. But what Allar did to overcome adversity, he threw a big pick that put his team in a hole, but the defense didn't play great, but they stopped USC a couple of times after Allar turned it over. They get the interception on the last offensive play for USC in regulation when it looks like USC is going to go. The ways Penn State found a way to get it done, I don't think they're perfect, but I think I come out of this like, whoa, that's a team that knows how to win. That's a team whose coach helped them find a way to win. That's a team that looks like, I don't know how you beat them when they're doing things like that. Yeah, they're not perfect, but wow, really impressive.
There are definitely concerns coming out of this game for sure. I'm sure we'll touch on them here in a little bit. But my biggest takeaway, to your point about Allar, Penn State found their quarterback. I know that may sound stupid for a 2-year starter, but Drew Allar last year, to me at least, and maybe part of it was offensive coordinator never feeling comfortable in the offense and what they're asking him to do, but it was not his offense last year. He was running the offense as a quarterback, but it never felt like he owned it. It was his. And it did feel like he was maybe playing timid or not to lose. And everyone kept talking about his no interception streak, but it felt like sometimes he was passing up some big time throws to take more checkdowns and just be more conservative. And even early this year with the new offense and they're lighting it up and they're having all these trick plays and stuff, Allar was playing a lot better. But this was the first sign of emotion, of control, where he came out in that fourth quarter down by 7, staring at possibly a season-altering loss here to USC on the road. And he said, this is my team. We're doing this. And he took control. Like you said, 2 big fourth down conversions, staring right down the barrel of USC's defense down the field, trusting a receiver who has let him down all game so far this year. Has not had a big impact in Fleming. And finding Nick Singleton in the check down that led to eventually the game tying score. You could tell right there, this is his team. This is his offense. He's been a starter now for 2 years. This was the first sign of Drew Allar taking control and saying, this is mine. I got it. Get on my back. I'm carrying us. That was Trip. It was awesome to see.
And for a Penn State team that has relied so much on its defense, and look, that defense made enough plays, right? Deni Dennis Sutton in overtime made 2 huge plays. Read the interception at the end, holding USC to 3 points after a couple of Allar interceptions. But this is really about Penn State's offense and Kotelnicki and Franklin and Allar and Warren, 17 catches, 224 yards, snapped the ball, threw the ball, caught the ball, ran the football. What doesn't the guy do? But this is about Penn State coming back and its offense. there's always been this assumption. And I think one of the concerns is, okay, like the defense, how good is it? Is it national championship caliber? And can they keep up with an Ohio State, Oregon with the way the defense played in that game? And we'll get to that. But this is about Penn State's offense, and from where they were at this point last year to where they are this year, and the quarterback probably being the biggest reason for that, along with the offensive coordinator and like their trust and their fearlessness. That to me, if you're a Penn State fan, that's why you got to be so excited about how they won this game, in a game that just feels like this is one they've been on the other side of so many times. And as it's a program looking to break through, and I know they still need to do it, and they won't have the chance against Michigan, but they still need to do it against those teams in the biggest stage, the Ohio States, Michigans of the world. This felt like they made that they started to jump the hurdle, and like they're kind of getting over it. And I think that's why Penn State fans are so, and obviously what it sets them up for the rest of the way when you look at their schedule. But this felt like more of a we're breaking through that wall finally type of win. And I think that's why they should be really excited to find a way to win it that way.
You had obviously a front row view to all this here as being on the sideline for this game. And I'm curious because as like a fan, right, myself, I text a lot of friends. Even when they're down 20-6, I'm like, they're winning this game. They get off slow. They have these big second half comebacks. I had no doubt they'd win the game. But I'm not going to lie, at the same time, in the second half, I'm like, holy cow, like USC still making some big plays and Allar's throwing interceptions. I'm like, I never felt comfortable until the game was over when they won. What was the feeling? Like you talked about Allar's emotion when you're down there and they're trailing and making a comeback and USC answered. Like, what was just the feeling on the sideline here that you were observing?
Felt really good. I think the sideline for Penn State was, I mean, it was it felt like this is we're not going to lose this game. That was the consistent message of the energy. And I haven't seen a sideline that fearless and that confident in themselves since I've been on the sideline covering Penn State. And that even dates back.
Wow.
Like as I was working with Big Ten Network and working with a bunch of different, when they had Barkley and McSorley and they had some great leaders. I have not seen a sideline with the personality that it had on Saturday. And like there were moments like Carter dropped a pick that looked like, okay, they're going to put the game away. Got the ball back after stopping USC in a 2020 game, and Allar throws a pick on first. Like there are moments where you felt like, okay, maybe it's not going to happen. And they continued to rely on a kicker who had just started his first game ever the week before to go 4 for 4 and win it in overtime. Yeah, it just felt like moments. And I think it's a testament, honestly, to USC. I thought, seeing USC in person and all the weapons and Hudson and Deuce Robinson and Branch at wide receiver, Woody Marks was as good as a back as I've seen in person. Moss making throws. And USC really stymieing Penn State's run game and holding it in check, and Singleton and Allen and the plays that they made, and Joyner made the 75-yard run, and Joyner in the pass game. I thought if you didn't know the record and the rankings, you wouldn't know that USC was 3-3. Yeah, like I think Penn State's concerns are also a testament to how good USC is, and really for them, 3-4 plays away from being the team that everyone's talking about right now. But when you flip the script and this is great for Penn State. Well, if you're Lincoln Riley, you're now 11-10 your last 21. You should have beaten Michigan, should have beaten Minnesota, and you're gonna feel like you should have beaten Penn State. And for whatever reason, and it's a team that's made strides, right, but still getting the same results as last year. There's some real concern right now with them as to why can't we break through as close as they've been. The results are the results. And this is so eerily similar to the way last year played out, where they lost all those close games and they're losing all those close games again this year. I mean, what are their 3 losses by? Like 13 total points? It's insane.
It is. And it's the same formula too, where they have leads, they blow them, they can't recover. Did you have, because I know this was a big point of contention after the game. Did you have a problem with Lincoln Riley's clock management down the stretch? Okay, you did.
Yeah. I thought he rushed it. I thought they panicked and put so much pressure on that 3rd and 6 throw that Moss to me in that spot, even if you don't like, I get why he feels like we need 1 or 2 plays to get into field goal range. I still have all 3 timeouts, 14 seconds. That's time. But I thought it set them into panic mode. Use the timeout at 30, 36 seconds. Even if Penn State stops you, you're punting. Like, force them to go the entire field. USC there was a pretty strong wind at their back, and the kicker Lance had been good and it showed good range.
Yeah,
I just thought it was bizarre. I would have used the timeouts. I think that falls on Lincoln Riley. I think he put his team in a tough spot. I think everyone on the sidelines kind of like, why isn't he using the timeout here? And it put so much pressure on that 3rd and 6 for them with 14 seconds left. I thought it was really bizarre. I thought it was bad game management. I think Penn State fans take for granted sometimes the game. Like, James Franklin's a good game management coach. And I was almost thinking, like, if you're Penn State, how do you manage this? Because they're going to go down and set up to kick a game-winning field goal. And it was bizarre. Yeah, I think a lot of that falls on. I do. I really think a lot of that falls on Lincoln Riley, because USC had the momentum, and our discussion on the broadcast was if they get to the 35-40, like, and it looked like a sure bet at that point. And then they were moving, and then just they were moving. They had tempo, and just let the clock wind down, and it stopped all their momentum. I thought it was really weird. I thought it was really, really weird.
I had more of an issue with the play calling than I would say even the clock management, because like after that completion, you get down to the Penn State 49-yard line, about a minute or so left. Like, well, I'm with you. Like, one more first down, you get to the 40, 35-yard line. I'm feeling good about attempting a field goal there to win the game. And then to run the ball, you lose yardage. Penn State was a lot better in the run game in the second half compared to the first half, doing a better job at controlling, not limiting, but at least trying to control Woody Marks. And at least where I don't have a problem with the clock management from Lincoln Riley's perspective is he did, I think the most important thing was he made sure his team is ending the game with the ball in their hands. And the reality is Miller Moss had an open receiver. If he hits the throw, the game's probably over. You're down at the 35-ish yard line, if I'm not mistaken, for a receiver that's open. You hit him, he goes down, you call a timeout, there's like 4 seconds left, kick a field goal, and probably make it and probably win. It was a throw, like it was an open throw that he should have made. If you make it, I think Lincoln Riley looks like a genius. That's where I won't get on him too much, just because he bled the clock down to where they needed one throw and you probably win the game. But obviously it did not happen. Penn State wins. Really quickly, last thing I want to ask you about, well, 2 things actually really fast. We've not mentioned Tyler Warren one time yet so far. 17 catches.
No. I mentioned Warren's. I mentioned it.
You did. Okay, fine. Let's get into him because he deserves a lot more praise than just a name mention.
You mean that like Heisman contender?
No, seriously. Because what they're asking him to do, 17 catches in the game, touchdown reception, ran the ball for a first down, threw the ball for 9 yards, snapped the ball. Did you even know you could do that? Number one, snap the ball, be eligible for a pass. And is that something you've ever seen in practice? Because I saw it. I'm like, the creativity from Andy Kotelnicki is truly out of this world.
He has another skill set too that I've seen at practice. We'll see if it plays out this year.
Oh, I mean, I don't know what else he could possibly do unless he wants to kick a field goal. I don't know what else he could possibly do. So I guess stay tuned for that little tease from Trip. But that was Penn State's had a ton of great athletes, right? Running backs have had a bunch, receivers have had a bunch. I don't remember, and maybe Saquon Barkley's Rose Bowl performance and a loss against USC back in 2017 kind of rings a bell here, or 2016 season, 2017 year. I can't recall a more dominant performance from an individual Penn State player in my 30 years on this earth.
Yeah, I think it's right with Barkley's game at Iowa, where Penn State won it at the wire on the touchdown throw to Juwan Johnson. I would put it right with that, where you Great knew call. He was getting the ball. He was still getting the ball. He was targeted 20 times and had 17 catches on 20 targets. There was a fan in the stands for USC, and he was yelling, "Cover, bleeping cover 44." We know he's getting the bleeping ball. Bleeping cover him, and everyone around's like looking, But he was right. Like, he's the focal point of the offense. And I think, when you get into what does Penn State look like moving forward, they had over 500 yards of offense in this game. They overcame the turnovers. They overcame having to settle for field goals in the red zone. And that's why it's a 33-30 overtime game. They were far from perfect and still found a way to win it on the road in overtime. Allen only averaged 3.5 yards per carry. Singleton only averaged 2.6 yards per carry.
He was not good.
But Warren was that good. He was that good. So now, you figure, okay, if you can I don't know that you can take away Warren, because I think Penn State's credit Kotelnicki and Franklin for scheming ways that, even though he's their guy on offense, credit Kotelnicki and Franklin for still finding a way to get him 17 catches for 224 yards. But now, the rest of the year, does this then change the dynamic for Wallace and Fleming and Clifford and Singleton and Allen? And I think as a defense, okay, if you're going to try to take away Singleton, you can't take away Warren. If you're going to try to take away Warren, you're probably not going to be able to take away Singleton. And then this is where Evans and Wallace and the receivers start to play a factor when you got Allar cooking like he is. And he ran the ball. Allar had some big plays with his legs. I think it's a really tough offense to defend. But yeah, wow, that's a season's worth of targets and catches for a tight end.
That is, and it came in the span of 60 plus minutes. Truly unbelievable stuff here. And also, too, just some of the degrees of difficulty and some of the touchdown catch over a defender one-handed after snapping the football. There's not enough adjectives and praise we could put on Warren for that performance. That was unbelievable. But now Penn State wins, right? They're undefeated.
Yep.
Oregon, undefeated. And the third and only other undefeated team trip that we all thought before the season would be right here at the top. Indiana. Man, that is unbelievable so far through 7 weeks. Credit to those three teams.
Yeah. And then, you start looking at it too, Indiana, they got Nebraska, Washington, at Michigan State, Oregon's at Purdue. Here's the first real test for Oregon. After a huge home win, you got to go to Purdue and play on a Friday night. A Purdue team that just scored 49 points this week, by the way. And then Penn State a bye at Wisconsin and against Ohio State. You start looking at it, who's going to be the last left? Or how long can this run go for these teams? Because the three remaining unbeatens don't play each other. They don't, we could, in theory, end with. No. You don't think so?
I don't. No. I think Indiana.
I want to compare, and this is no offense to Indiana, and we've spent 40 minutes here on Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, USC, and rightfully so. The games deserve that. But real quick, comparing Penn State, Oregon, and I don't want to compare Indiana in that group. I want to compare Ohio State in that group. Now that we saw a marquee matchup for all the teams after the week, real quick, because I want to get into some of the other things and other games that I don't want to do disservice to the rest of the teams in the Big Ten. But I was spoiled, it's 80 and sunny, and I'm standing on the sideline in Southern Cal over the weekend.
Got a nice 10, must be nice.
I did. It does. I still have the song stuck in my head too. Dun da 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 dun dun da 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 dun da da da. It
is one of the best in college football. It is so good.
It depends what side you're on. Some people may say best, some people may say annoying. But Penn State, Oregon, and no disrespect to Indiana, but Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State are the best three teams in the Big Ten. Indiana still has to prove it, and until proven otherwise, they've killed everyone they've played. Tip of the cap. But Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State are the best 3-10. Coming out of the week, without giving your rankings away, how would you compare, contrast? What separates one of, if any, of those three teams, or are they too similar to separate right now?
I think they're too similar to separate. I think the biggest separator for me right now is Oregon's speed. And that's something that we saw Ohio State struggle with. And we just kind of talked about Penn State and the questions they have a receiver. I don't think right now either team could keep up with just the pure team speed Oregon has on top of the incredible accuracy Dylan Gabriel can put on these passes here. We saw Penn State's defense a little bit struggle with the pass as well, struggle with slowing down a high-powered offense with USC. Obviously, we saw Ohio State's defense as well. I think these three teams, I thought there was a little bit of separation between the three at different points all year long. After 6 weeks, halfway through the year, or 7 weeks, but 6 games for all three of these teams, I think all three are clearly 1A, 1B, 1C. I have never felt like they have been closer at any point this season than they are right now after 6 games. I would give Oregon the nod because I think for me, the differentiating factor for them that they have better than any other team is the team speed. But I think all three of these teams match up really, really well with each other. And all three have different avenues and areas they can exploit against the other two that would make, I think, if we had a round robin, let's say, I think we would have 3 really close games against each matchup.
I think we might have 3 1-1 teams after a round robin between them.
I would agree.
Penn State needs to still create more at the wide receiver position. Like Fleming had some big plays. We saw Wallace week 1. Evans has had some down. Penn State still needs, but the other two teams don't have a Warren. They don't have a Warren. I think Penn State's been so good in the trenches too. Their defensive line has shown that they can take over when needed. I think they missed Winston in the secondary because that's forced them to do some things differently with Reed than where they'd want to play him at the linebacker type, kind of that up third safety that they wanted to. But they found ways to win games, and they've got an edge to them and a chip on their shoulder this year. And then you got Oregon with their speed and their receivers, and Ohio State with Smith and Igbuka. I don't know how you separate. I don't know how you separate the three right now. And we were fortunate to get a question this week. And what is the email again?
If you have questions, email us stillenrolledpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to answer your questions. We're doing it right now. Stillenrolledpodcast@gmail.com. That is where you can ask us any Big Ten question. Will be answered right here on the pod. You'll get a shout out.
This one's from John, and it's just like a Penn State question. At the midway point of the regular season, given Saturday's win for Penn State, what is their new ceiling or floor, and how does it impact fan expectations? Starting the year for Penn State, he felt like it was just make the playoff. But now that they're in position to possibly host a game, you assume 11-1 at worst, right? Should the expectation shift to win a playoff game? But, I want to take that from not just the Penn State perspective, but of the three. I think all three of these teams, the expectation is you not only make the playoff, but they need to all at least win one playoff game. That's to me a reasonable expectation for all three of these teams right now. I think anything less than that is a disappointment.
Let me take it a step further. Look around the rest of college football. Is it crazy to say all three of these teams could win a national title this year? I
think Penn State has to consistently show the ability to be more explosive offense. I know they've done it this year with Kotelnicki. I know they've been creative. They kind of do it in different ways right now than what you'd expect of just a receiver like Igbuka or Smith or what Oregon has, and taking the top off. Quarterback that's run the ball well but doesn't have the top end speed that maybe the other two quarterbacks have. I still think they need to show the ability to be more consistent offensively and be more consistent, get off to better, faster starts. Yeah, I don't think it's out of the question. I don't. I don't. I think, I think these three teams are all championship they still have question marks. That all of them do.
They do, but I think it's part of.
So does every other program in college football.
I mean, look at Alabama right now. They lost to Vanderbilt. They got lucky to slide by South Carolina at home. They have problems on their defense, especially right now. Georgia, 1 week their offense can't score, the next week their defense can't stop anybody. A lot of these teams, maybe outside of Texas right now, who's they've looked really well, and they've really not been any close games. Outside of them, every team you thought could be a national title contending team coming forward, I think they have a question mark or so about them. So I'm with you. These three teams, I think, they're not perfect.
You argued that Oregon should be number one. Texas has shown that they don't have question marks so far.
Yes. Now I would put Oregon number one because I think you just beat the number 2 team or number 2 team in the country. I think you should get rewarded for that with a big win like that. Even though Oklahoma beat a ranked opponent, I think for me, Oregon has the best win in college football right now through the first 7 weeks of the season. But I think they're right there, and so it's you look around the teams we thought would be dominating, the big bad SEC and all these teams. a lot of them have shown flaws. I mean, Ole Miss probably out of the college football playoff conversation right now. Like, nobody is perfect, which I think makes it to the point where you're talking about these three teams, Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon. Another question was about Penn State's expectations now moving forward. I don't think it's like, I think these three teams through 7 weeks, I would say, are absolutely in the national title contending mix. I'm not saying it's likely they're going to win, but when you're talking about who can win the national title this year, and you can list Texas, and you can, if you want to still put Alabama and Georgia in there, like, that's fine. I'm not saying you can, but I think these three teams, in any conversation you have about who can win a national title this year, I think so far, I think they've proven they should be in that conversation as well.
The other question, and I know we want to get to these other games, but the other question I got was about the tie-breaking scenarios, and you and I tried to decipher this the other week offline. Head-to-head results during the regular season, but three teams: Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State.
Oregon, Penn State, and Indiana are undefeated, I'm assuming, or all one loss?
I think you're kind of assuming like Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, all one loss, rather than Indiana. But Indiana's in the mix. Like, there's no doubt they're in the mix. It's head-to-head results during the regular season, because in theory, a conference championship, number one, is going to tell you who's going to get a bye in the college football playoff, but could determine between who finishes in the top 8 and who finishes outside the top 8 and has to go on the road in the playoff. Head-to-head during the regular season is the first one. Then record against common conference opponents. The third one, I don't understand. Record against mutual conference opponents with the best record. And then the best Big Ten winning percentage of conference opponents.
I think number 3.
The sixth one is a random draw of tied teams. I still think it's hard to believe, right? I was just saying to someone else this morning. It feels like we're at the stretch run. We've only played these teams, except for USC, 3 conference games. We're only halfway. There's a hell of a lot that could happen yet. We're only halfway. And I think like there's this thought right now of, oh my God, like, okay, this is how it's going to shake out. Penn State's going to play Ohio State yet. Maybe they end 11-1, or maybe they end 12-0, and Oregon. I think it's October 14th, and it's way too early. It's college football. If this year's taught us anything, expect the unexpected.
The season every year, just like college football, you get to this point where this is going to be crazy. How is this going to be solved? It figures itself out, right? It does solve itself, where a team's going to lose a game you don't expect. Maybe you pull off an upset that all of a sudden now cements them, in a better standing. It will get figured out. Here's a hot take for you. I don't think we'll be at option number 6 here. We have a blind draw, and it's all right. We have 3 teams picking for. We're going to see who's going to be in the Big Ten title game, and that would be a ratings bonanza, by the way. The conspiracy theories coming out of that would be tremendous.
Let's move on, because I mentioned a couple times, like, there are other games this week in the Big Ten that were either really, really good or really, really interesting. And let's start. Most surprising result. What Week 7 outcome shocked you the most?
How about Iowa? Not only beating Washington, we both predicted Iowa to win, but
because they're at home. They're good at home.
They are good at home. Washington coming, cross country, early start time, 11 a.m. local.
Toughest environment I've ever been in the Big Ten is Iowa.
Wow. High praise. And Washington learned that. But so we picked Iowa to win, but it's not like Washington's a sloucher. I thought this would be a close game, low scoring game.
I thought they were good.
How about the Hawkeyes dropping 40 points? First time they've scored 40 or more points in a Big Ten game. You got to go all the way back to when they shellacked Maryland on a Friday night back in 2021. I did not see this offensive explosiveness happening for Iowa against what has been a really good defense for Washington. Caleb Johnson continues to dominate, 166 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns. How about this trip? When you look at his impact, and he probably won't get any Heisman consideration because of Iowa's record, and part of it is best player on the best team. It's unfair, but it's true. But you look at Caleb Johnson, what he's done this year for Iowa's offense. He has almost half of their total yards. He has 813 of Iowa's 1,900 total yards, 43%. He scored 11 touchdowns out of the 17 their offense has scored. He has been a one-man wrecking crew. And credit to Cade McNamara. The monkey trip is finally off his back. First touchdown against a Power 5 opponent, going back to when Michigan beat Penn State in 2021. He threw a long eventual game-winning touchdown past Eric All. Some remember that one pretty well. So Cade McNamara now finally can put that in the trophy case. Touchdown pass for Iowa against a Power 5 opponent. How about the Hawkeyes? I did not see a 40-point explosion coming whatsoever.
My most surprising result, the over-under in the Illinois-Purdue game was 48.5. Both teams covered the over by themselves. Illinois, I thought Illinois was going to win big. It looked like they were going to win big. They were up 27-3. For a 50-49 Illinois victory in overtime is my most surprising. Not the fact that Illinois won, but how they got there. 50-49 in overtime. Both teams cover the over by themselves. My most surprising result, Purdue, 46 points after halftime. In their 4 other games against FBS opponents this year, only had 44 total points. Illinois needs 556 total yards. Purdue had 536 themselves, a game that had 49 first downs. What the heck? And Illinois led 27-3. Purdue 2 scores in the last 95 seconds. They took a 43-40 lead somehow after being down 27-3 in the third quarter. Illinois needs a field goal as time expires to send it to OT. Purdue goes for 2 in the first OT. Doesn't even get a pass off. Altmaier, 379 yards. My most surprising outcome isn't that Illinois won, but how it happened, 50-49 to get the little cannon back. That's my most surprising result.
That was unbelievable. That was just a great college football game where you're sitting there.
What a slate. What a game.
That was unbelievable. By the way, Purdue, keep Brown a quarterback. Okay, look, Hudson Card, nice guy.
Yeah.
He gave you some real juice, gave you some dual threat ability on the ground. He's your quarterback for the rest of the season. No doubt about it there. Nice to see Purdue show some fight. They had, by the way, Devin Mockett, was open in the corner, the 2-point conversion, and sweeping across. You see him really fast. We're talking about an incredible Purdue victory. But hey, great fight for the Boilermakers, and hopefully maybe this could provide a spark to be more competitive for the rest of the season. That's the hope. But yeah, I did not see that game coming at all.
That's a low bar. That's a low bar. Hey, a spark to be more competitive. Hey, here you go. Cool.
What else? We're going to say that Purdue's going to rip off 5 in a row here? Come on. Let's be realistic.
Yeah. Hey, we're giving Purdue some love. We're talking about Purdue on the Still in. We're talking about Purdue besides a coaching change on the podcast. Which team, and I think we may have touched on some of these teams, but for you, which team had the most impressive? Which team made a statement this weekend?
I think it's Oregon. Just not only that they won the game, but to me, it's the fact that, again, you were without your best defensive player in Jordan Birch. You had one of your key receivers get tossed in the first half. You left 5 points on the board. Like those mistakes, you usually against a top 5 team can't come back from. To their credit, they overcame them. By far played their best game of the season. Dylan Gabriel was tremendous. The offensive line not only was great moving the defensive line of Ohio State, but also did a great job keeping Dylan Gabriel upright, 0 sacks allowed, only 2 tackles for loss. Allowed the run game as well. For me, Oregon, how they played, the mistakes that they made that should have doomed this game for them, they still overcame. Ducks, I think, for me, the most impressive performance, most impressive win.
Mine, for all the knocks about, and I think it's just noise, and Drew Allar even talked about it in his interview with Big Ten Network after the game. Mine is Penn State for finding a way to come from behind on the road, a long trip to USC, and showing the personality and fight that they did to do it with a walk-on kicker needing big kicks. And, I feel like James Franklin's taken some unnecessary heat during his time at Penn State. Mine is the way that Penn State came back with what they now set themselves up with the rest of the year, knowing that they're trying to get over a hurdle, get into a playoff. They should be to win that game. They should be, and I'm not discounting a night game in Madison in 2 weeks. I'm not discounting that. I'm not discounting Washington coming to town on the road, Minnesota. But look, it is set up for them to go 11-1 at worst and to be in the playoff and to find a way to win that game at USC puts everything in front of them the rest of the year. My most impressive performance is Penn State.
Can I give one quick honorable mention?
Sure.
Minnesota. for how they won this game, down 10-0 to UCLA, concerned about a hangover after that big win over USC last week. PJ Fleck declared they were the best 2-3 team. So you said USC is the best 3-3 team in the country. Well, Minnesota's now 3-3. Maybe PJ Fleck will have a word with you about that. But like down 10-0, trailing 17-14 to drive down the field, Max Brosmer did to find Darius Taylor with less than 30 seconds left to find a way to win that game against a UCLA team that was desperate for a victory here. That was an impressive win for Minnesota.
Brosmer's not letting it up. I don't know that he has the talent around him to light it up. And I don't know that he's good enough to light it up. But he has put them, when he's needed to, and I know I said this going into it, he has put them in a position to win a lot of games with his game management and what he does at the end as a quarterback and his skills and his leadership. I mean, how many drives has he led them on? And they should have beat UNC the same way at the end. He has given them the opportunity to win games because what he's done in the clutch. And I'm really impressed with what he's done at the end of games this year. Tip of the cap to him. Again, they're not blowing teams out. They're not going to blow teams out, but they're playing well right now. And they've had some much needed wins, and also good job by UCLA. Like they played pretty well in Happy Valley, and they're not the worst team in the Big Ten.
Spoiler alert for the rankings coming out here. UCLA will not be down at number 18. Congratulations to you, Bruins fans. I'm making another quarterback change if I was UCLA. Go back to Martin, who played well against Penn State. But anyway, that's a different discussion for a different pod.
All right, let's take it flip side. Who's the most disappointing result this week?
Let's go to Friday night. Maryland. They got handled at home by Northwestern 37-10. 4 turnovers offensive. They were horrible. But you know what? This to me is...
Wait. Do you know how many first downs Northwestern had in the game?
I have no idea.
They have 37 points. They had 10 first downs. and won 37-10 on the road.
I guess, yeah, it makes sense when you have all these turnovers short. Wow. That has to be some sort of record. 37 points on 10 first downs. Unbelievable. But it goes like, this is bigger than just one game trip from Maryland. This is what they do. I went back and looked at it. Their offense in Big Ten play, going back to the start of 2021, they've only averaged 24.2 points per game. They're 11-19 in Big Ten play since 2021. But you look at the non-conference, they're 12-0 again in the non-conference, averaging 40 points per game. Now, granted, they played a few Power 5 teams. They played Virginia. They played West Virginia. It's a lot of cupcakes. I get it. But Maryland, man, they are the kings of September, always going to the Big Ten Conference, 3-0, rip-roaring, ready to go here. And as soon as conference play happens, it doesn't matter who they play. Remember, they lost to Michigan State earlier this year. They just got boat raced by Northwestern out of their own building. They crumble and fold, especially offensively, every single year once Big Ten play starts. It's concerning, and that was just the icing on the cake here on Friday night at home. And another, by the way, stop with the Friday night blackouts. It does not work. It does not work. You have gotten blown out now against Penn State in a blackout, Iowa in a blackout, and now Northwestern. Hang it up.
So for me, it's another team that was at home. And to use your word, boat raced, right? Yeah. Wisconsin beating Rutgers 42-7. And like Wisconsin's turned things around here. They've got more balance offensively. You know, Walker had 198 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. But what happened to Rutgers? Here's a team that we're talking about. You look at their schedule, lost by 7 at Nebraska. Never was going to be pretty, never was going to be super dominant, but had like a good brand and identity. Run the ball, get enough from your quarterback position, and play really good defense. They've now, to lose 42-7 at home against Wisconsin, they're down 28-0 at the end of the third quarter. They allowed 549 yards, 309 rushing yards. Monangai only had 3.8 yards per carry. Kaliak-Manis, 12 for 32, 103 yards. And you talk about how perception can change really fast in this league. We went from talking about Rutgers as sleeper 9-10 win team, maybe even more. Now you lost back-to-back at Nebraska by 7. Okay, no biggie. At home against Wisconsin, 42-7, really raises some eyebrows. And the perception of the league has changed so fast. Now they have UCLA, who's playing better. Then they have to go to USC. Then they have Minnesota, who's playing better. All of a sudden, we go from Rutgers to, 9-10 wins. Do they end with a winning season? Could they lose like 5 straight? Wow. That, to me, Rutgers' most disappointing performance and most disappointing stretch here the last couple of weeks. Ooh.
Yeah, it's been very, very rough for Rutgers. Is it enough to put them, Trip, at the bottom of the Big Ten rankings here for week number 8. Let's pull it up here. Our rankings, the Big Ten rankings going into week number 8. Congratulations to UCLA fans. Congratulations to Purdue fans. You are out of the basement. The new king of the basement, I guess, if you will, the new tenant, Maryland. We both have Maryland.
The cellar dwellers, Ryan. The cellar dwellers.
This trip, that's what I have in the podcast, really, for stuff like that. Thank you. The cellar dwellers there are Maryland. One of the biggest discrepancies we have here, you have Northwestern at 15. I have them at 12. I'll give Northwestern credit here. They have been, even though maybe the wins have not come
same thing as last year,
they've been competitive.
Good coach. David Braun's getting the most out of the least.
He is. He absolutely is. And Jack Lausch now is improving at quarterback, brings some more life to that Wildcats offense.
And I know for people watching on YouTube, they're looking at the rankings in the top and see, look, we could put Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State. I think we both agree, right? It's like 1A, 1B, 1C still after the results this weekend.
Agreed. All right. We have, full disclosure here. I can't edit to put 1A, 1B, 1C. We have to do 1, 2, 3. But you were right. And we just talked about all three of these teams still going into week number 8 and beyond, I think are easily in the national title conversation here. So there is still a line, I think, between 1, 2, 3 and everybody else. We have the same 4, 5, 6, Indiana, Illinois, Nebraska. How about, by the way, a really good spot here for Indiana this week. Big noon kickoff against Nebraska. That's going to be a really fun game, a really intriguing matchup. Glad they're getting the attention they should get here. But I think also this shows, we both have USC 7, Iowa 8, Michigan 9. Like this, the Big Ten is good.
USC is 1-3 in the Big Ten. We have them ranked 7th.
But it's a test. Lincoln Riley said it, and I think a little bit is a cop-out, but I think also a little bit is true here. I hate to play both sides, but I think it's reality. Yeah. They have one of the best, toughest schedules in all of college football here for the first 6 weeks. And they've been in these games. Now, they haven't found a way to get over the hump in some of them. But, you came away impressed. I came away impressed. I don't think it's, crazy to sit here and say USC, despite, like you said, one of the worst records in the Big Ten, to be 7th in the conference because they've not looked overmatched. Now, there should be Minnesota, no doubt about it. But they have not one time this season, despite playing LSU, and I think you saw how good LSU is beating Ole Miss, playing Penn State, playing Michigan on the road. They've never looked overmatched. I think they deserve credit for that.
Yeah, they haven't gotten the results, but I think if you're looking at your schedule and you see USC on it, compared to even some of these other teams, you're more fearful to play USC than you are the teams that we have, despite their record, than the teams that are ranked below them or even ranked in that same area. Like, I'd be more concerned to play USC, and maybe I should have reflected this in the rankings, probably USC than Illinois or USC than Nebraska. It's been, again, that doesn't, it's not an excuse for the results, because I think, we can always talk about Penn State and Oregon after this weekend, but don't forget about USC and Lincoln. There's some pressure now on Lincoln Riley, as well as they may play and as much talent as they may have. You do have to flip the results, and 11-10 in the last game. He has more losses at USC in 3 years than he had at Oklahoma in 5.
Oof. Not good. And when you're getting all that money, right, when you're highly regarded, you're getting paid to win. You're not getting paid to be competitive. And so while they have shown a lot of fight and have been in these games late, it is a bottom line business. Ryan Day can attest to that as well. The bottom line is you got to win these games. USC is paying him to win these games. He's expected to win these games. And so far, like you said, they've been too often on the short end of the stick in these close games that are very much winnable. They haven't been able, though, to get over the hump just yet. But still, that's a lot of talent on that team. And I think now that they've kind of gotten through the toughest stretch of their season, you'll see now the wins start to stack up here for USC moving forward. All righty, Trip. That was a loaded episode here, a jam-packed episode. But hey, look, week 7 warranted it, right? That was a great week. 4 insane games. So thank you for, number one, tuning in.
These are the notes this week.
Holy hell. That printer, man, a lot of trees killed. What was that, 10 pages? It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. But this is the stuff we love talking about. So make sure you're subscribing on YouTube, Still Enrolled Podcast, same name, wherever you get your podcasts as well. And tell a friend. Share with friends.
Yes, that's really important. That is really important. make sure you're sharing, telling your friends, your family. We got some questions this week. I know the group text is listening to the pod. Like, thank you. But group text, put it in your other group text so that way your other group texts are listening to the pod, and then telling your friends on, Facebook or MySpace or X or IG or TikTok.
MySpace. How old are you? My God. There goes Gen Z. That's actually the scary part. Gen Z probably wouldn't even know what you're talking about. Is that the new upcoming app, MySpace?
Mhm. I'm teaching a news writing class at Penn State this semester, and I asked, how often do you read? And I don't want to say like an online article. Have you read a magazine? Have you ever read a newspaper? And honestly, I got zero hands for people who have read anything more than 180, 240 characters at a time. I'm just like, whoa, we gotta. I guess we're gonna start. We're gonna start low and like let's work our way up. I mean, they've been great. They've been great. It's been fun, but yeah, to try to get someone to consume something more than a social media post has been an unforeseen challenge. Let's say.
I will say I am concerned that you are in charge now of trying to connect with the younger generation.
You know what we'll do? One of the episodes, I'll read excuses as to why they've missed class.
Oh, yes. Oh my God, yes. Oh, that is a tease. Yes. This I'll give Gen Z
I,
credit.
I have a
They
couple
seem
of
to be
emails
creative.
now. I have a couple of emails now.
That is a hell of a tease. And that is why right there, forget the analysis, forget the games. That right there should be enough for you to subscribe, tell your friends, and listen to the pod because
I
this will
should have
be good.
I should have done that tease at the beginning, not an hour in. We're really gonna find out who's dedicated and listening. Like an hour in. I don't even I can't believe I talk for well, I can, but I can't I don't know that I've listened to this podcast to a podcast for this long. So God bless if you're still tuned in.
Appreciate your support. Thank you for
Mhm.
listening. We'll be back on Thursday to get you set for week number 8 right here, of course, on the Still Enrolled podcast.